Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Working Wednesday webinar on cover letter writing. Just as a reminder, Working Wednesday webinars are skill building webinars designed to help you as a student prepare for the working world. We have two more webinars after this one on resumes and one on interviewing skills. And for those students looking for a chance to practice these skills, we are holding workshops on the Thursday following the webinar for you to get one-on-one help via Zoom or in person at Spark Lab. You can register for our webinars and workshops at connectedlane.org and click on the Elevate tab, and then you'll see student resources there. So today for our webinar on cover letter writing, we are joined by Trevor Campbell and Christina Newland from Kernot Stokes. Welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And I will let the two of you take it away.
Okay, give me a second here. I'm going to use some technology to pop up my slides. Yeah, so as Hillary just said, I'm Trevor Campbell and my colleague Christina Newland is here. We're going to talk about cover letters, give you a little bit of background on us. We work at Kernot Stokes, which is a CPA firm in Eugene. You would best kind of be able to locate us as we're over by the Valley River Center. And we are not in the Darth Vader buildings, but we are the building that's sort of behind those buildings closer to the river. So that's usually a point of reference that people can kind of quickly identify where we're at in the city. So I'm a CPA. I also have my certified fraud examiner credential, that's the CFE there. And I work mainly in our audit practice as a senior manager, which is preparing financial statements and things like that. And my experience is that I am a writer of many different cover letters in the past. So I can kind of talk about what worked for me and the things I learned. Christina is our director of talent acquisition, which means she is kind of our lead recruiter. Is in charge of kind of finding new talent for our organization and spends a lot of time talking with college students and non-college students, reading a lot of resumes, a lot of interviews, and many cover letters, although maybe not as many as would always be expected.
As we'd like to.
We're going to come in.
We'd like to see more.
Yeah. So we're going to talk to you about kind of what the importance of a cover letter is and then how to go about putting one together. So let's kind of look at our agenda here. So first we'll cover why a cover letter. Maybe I'll just first say what a cover letter is and then why. We'll go through best practices of kind of how to prepare a cover letter so that it puts your best foot forward. We'll tell a couple of stories about examples of good cover letters and bad cover letters, so you know what to avoid and what to do, and then we'll open up some time for questions if anybody has any. Okay, so first off, I'm gonna move myself over here. Let's talk about why a cover letter. So like I said, let me throw out first what a cover letter is. A cover letter is, as it is probably sounds from the definition, a letter that goes in front of your resume when you send in for a job application. And effectively, it's just a one-page letter that briefly introduces you before they get to your resume. So you probably already know that putting your resume together is important, but you might not know why a cover letter would be as important, or maybe in some cases even more important. So let's kind of walk through some considerations there. So a cover letter is your first impression. So I was trying to think about what that means in terms of, submitting some paperwork to somebody. It's kind of like a handshake, right? The resume is going to start getting into some facts, some stuff, but the cover letter is the first thing they're going to see. It's the first introduction to you. And it can really, if done well, leave a big impression and a good impression. So that's the first thing. Why is that? How does it do that? Well, it lets you highlight some things about you that are different, interesting, valuable. It lets you showcase your personality beyond just a set of facts. The resume is really just a bullet point list of sort of facts and experiences, and it's hard to really draw a lot of personality of somebody out from that, but the cover letter gives you that chance. And then it lets you kind of expand upon your motivations for wanting to work with the organization. I'm going to walk through kind of each one of those a little more. So like I said, it's your first impression, it's your handshake. In many cases, and job markets are often very competitive, I'd say they're almost always competitive for good jobs. And so as a hirer, Christina can probably say even better than me, but there's times where if you post a job, you might be accepting dozens or even hundreds of resumes. And if you're in charge of going through those, the first thing you want to do is you just want to narrow it down to a group of good applicants. It's not feasible that you can look at hundreds of those things. And so the cover letter right off the bat puts you in a different pool of potential candidates from those that just send in a resume, because it shows that you put a little bit more effort forward. And so you can kind of, just by preparing a cover letter, often you can make that first cut by simply being somebody who put extra effort into the process of applying. That I laid out here at the bottom. A cover letter gets your resume read. Your resume gets you an interview, and the interview gets you a job. So just as the first step in the process, the cover letter gets your foot kind of lodged in the door so that you get a chance to maybe talk to somebody or at least get extra consideration. Christina, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything as I'm going through here.
Sure. And I think that just in terms of looking at applicants, we might use something, a program like Indeed, let's say. That's a program that applicants you can post positions and applicants can apply through that. Well, we might receive applicants from all over the country. And then it's very confusing because, you have someone in Dallas, Texas applying for a position here in Eugene. And unless there's a cover letter that explains their thought process and what they're thinking, they're planning on moving, they want to be in Eugene for some reason, it's often I don't read those resumes because the odds that they are actually interested in moving to our community are slim. So unless there's a viable reason, that would be a really applicable example of why a cover letter would be important.
Yeah, I mean, perfect segue into like number 2, which is having that letter lets you highlight things about yourself. It lets you highlight, that you are willing to move or looking to move. It lets you highlight just some facts about you that might make you different. The main thing you want to do when you're kind of applying for a job is you need something that makes you stand out. You want something that makes you memorable. And it's usually not just that you are adept at using Excel. That's just not, that might be something that's very valuable, but it's not going to make you different from everybody else. So the cover letter gives you a few paragraphs, a few sentences to be able to kind of expand upon you and focus on the things that you think are your best strengths or accomplishments. So it's important to note that it's not a simple restatement of your resume. It goes deeper into you pull a few facts out from your resume, sometimes just stuff that's not even in the resume, but it's kind of between the lines, right? And you get to talk about those things. You can, if you have a break in, work experience on your resume, you can use the cover letter to explain what you were doing during that time, if that's something that was really meaningful, and that kind of answers the first question somebody might have. So you pull out some things, or you add a little bit of extra context behind those, so that you're putting your best foot forward. You're making sure that they're hearing the things that you want them to hear, and not just like making assumptions from what they see on the other parts of the application. It lets you showcase your personality. Like I said, resumes are a list of facts. This lets you be creative. It's really hard to be creative on a resume. In most cases, the things that would be creative on a resume are probably detractors. So, the cover letter gives you a chance to maybe, if you're a good writer, it gives you a chance to showcase that a little bit. If you have some fun experiences that are leading to you applying for this job, it lets you put those out there as well. I put in here, when people hire, in general, we want to hire people not just that are qualified. We want to hire people that we think are interesting, that would be good to work with. When you work in an office environment like we have, you're spending many, many hours working with the same people. The last thing you want is to be around people that you just don't enjoy. And so, you know, just being able to show that you're somebody who's actually interesting and fun in some cases is important, because it starts making someone think, I wouldn't mind working with this person. I wouldn't mind having this person on my team. And that's a really good thing. So again, it's not a list of qualifications. It's a bit of a narrative. You get to tell a story about yourself that kind of grabs their attention right off the bat.
And then to that point, I think, Trevor, you kind of hit on it, but if you're applying for a position and it lists out qualifications for the position, and if for some reason you don't meet it, let's say it's a GPA. For example, at Kernet Stokes, we generally list 3.0 as the minimum GPA for applying. Well, I'll have students sometimes apply and they don't have a 3.0, but the cover letter is where you can explain why you didn't meet that qualification. It's not that maybe you didn't understand the material. It's you were taking care of a parent, or you were working full time, or there are different circumstances that resulted in your inability to meet that GPA requirement, but that also show that you're an especially hard worker, or you were doing athletics or other things. And so it, like Trevor said, you know, if the qualifications aren't met, there are going to be questions, and you can kind of get ahead of those by listing those in the cover letter. It's important. So
yeah. And then the fourth one is it lets you expand upon your motivations for why you want to work with that organization. You can, again, pull experiences from your resume to the forefront, and you can also take those experiences and try to marry them to the values of the organization or the type of things that the organization does. This is a chance to show that you know something about the place that you're applying for a job for. It lets you, you know, which also means that you have to put in a little bit of extra effort to know something about the job that you're applying for. That can just be going to their website, looking at looking at who works there, looking at what they list as their values, what they list as their firm, their mission statement. And you can kind of say, hey, I know that your goal is to service clients to the best of your ability. Well, when I did this, such and such on my work experience as shown on my resume, that's what I was doing. I was, they were my clients and I was working with them. And that just shows that you are thinking about how you're going to contribute to the organization and that you know something about them. So marrying your skills and values to the organization's skills and values in some way is a really beneficial thing that the cover letter can allow you to do. Again, before you've ever even had an interview, you get to show that off and differentiate yourself from, honestly, probably the majority of the other applicants that will be applying for a position.
And even before marrying those skill sets and the qualifications for the position, I had a student reference the website in just a one-liner. I see that you like to work hard and play hard, and that ties into my view on work outside of school. So they just pulled one sentence from the website and tied that in, and that just shows, they read it. So that puts them ahead of other people too.
All right, so hopefully now you're convinced that a cover letter is important and why you need to do it. Let's move on to sort of some of the best practices for how you're going to go about functionally putting this together. So we're going to talk about a few different bullets here. Why you, why them, tailoring it to your audience, being interesting in making a connection, and then professional writing. So let's kind of walk through each one of those a little bit. So first thing, an aspect of the cover letter should address why should they be interested in you. Again, you'll have a resume that lists out a whole bunch of things. Some of those things will be relevant. Some of those things will not be as relevant. The cover letter is your chance to pull those things forward and start talking about what the relevant experience was. Again, some of that's going to be subtext from the perspective of the resume. You can list a job. Hey, I worked at, I'll just even say like a fast food restaurant. Well, if I didn't work at a fast food restaurant myself, I might not really know how that could be applicable to the position that I'm trying to hire for. But you get a chance to tell me, hey, when I was the manager at such and such place, I often dealt with scheduling, I dealt with managing people, I dealt with, having to order, and you know, those are skills that I think will come into play as I'm working in such and such a role for you. That suddenly makes me think, oh, yeah, actually, those are applicable skills. I might have just passed over that, but now I have a reason to think about that more. And I have something to talk to you about when I bring you in for an interview, perhaps. So again, you get to pull out those unique skills and say, this is why you should be interested in me. Now, an important point there, and it's kind of a subtle difference, but it's important that when you're talking about why you, it's about, in this case, what you're going to bring to their organization. So there's a difference between saying, I will be able to do this for you versus I'm interested in you teaching me about such and such, right? One is what I'm going to do to contribute. The other is what you're going to do to give back to me. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get anything from that organization, but the focus here is on making them understand why you're going to be valuable to them. You can understand how they're going to be valuable to you, but that's not what this portion of this is addressing.
You are selling yourself to them.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so why you? Second is why them. So you just told them why they should be interested in you. Now you're going to tell them why you are interested in them. Why is this a job that you are applying for? Why is this a place that you want to work? What do you think makes them different from the other job opportunities you might have or the competitors in their market? Again, a chance to kind of talk about them. We want to hire people that connect with our mission, our culture, and our employees. And so you get to kind of showcase how you are doing that already. You know, Christina said, it can be as simple as one sentence from the website that says, hey, I know that you value this. I value that too. And now it's just an immediate thing of why you're interested in them. And it lets you get beyond that kind of just some of those first questions that are going to be addressed. You know, Christina, you talked about the idea of coming, somebody outside of the state maybe applying. Well, why are you interested? Are you really going to move here? It's your chance to say, yeah, I'm actually moving to Eugene and I'm looking for a job already, or you're just a company that I found through such and such means, or I heard about through such and such means, and I would be willing to move to work for a company like that, you know, and you get to give your motivations and how that organization is influencing your decision to apply.
And employers want to hire people who are committed to the firm. And so if you send off a cover letter, it's fairly generic, and you can tell that this has been sent to multiple firms, it's not specific or tailored to the firm, like our firm, let's say, then it's a little bit off-putting. This person, they don't really care where they get a job. They're applying everywhere. We're not unique. We're not special to them. And on the contrary, if you can tell that they, you know, we are specific, meeting the niche that they're looking for, maybe the market they're looking to stay in, or our clients are of specific interest to them, then we can tell they're a little more interested specifically in our firm, and that makes us more interested in them. Okay, you know, maybe there is a match here.
Yeah, so that leads us to this, which is you have to tailor your cover letter to the audience. You can have a template. It's perfectly fine for you to write kind of like a base cover letter, especially if you know there's a few things that you really want to highlight. Maybe it's a gap in work experience. Maybe it's something else that you know are going to be in there. And you can kind of have a baseline of kind of, but you have to update it every time. You have to update it not just for every different organization. You might need to update it for different roles within the same organization. It's so important. I mean, what Christina said, I think is crucial that you hear, which is a good cover letter is incredible. A bad cover letter that is clearly not customized and is just a template that's dropped on top of a resume, it can actually be a detriment. I mean, it just shows that you didn't really spend any effort. Part of the goal of this is that you are putting in a little bit of extra effort. So I'm not going to tell you that it's easy to write cover letters for the jobs you're applying for. I'm just going to tell you that it's worth it. And that's the real takeaway. It needs to be customized. It needs to be specific. You need to draw on like some aspects of the organization, as we've said, do a little bit of research ahead of time, know why you're interested, be able to answer that question. And then do a little bit of matching to the extent you can, do a little bit of matching the kind of tone of the organization. You know, if you're going to apply for an accounting firm like us, you're probably gonna understand that, you know, an accounting firm, especially this time of year, we're really busy, and we're gonna be a little bit more maybe kind of focused on just sort of professionalism or something. If you're applying for a different kind of job, you know, there's a lot of stories of tech jobs, for example, maybe Google or something like that, where, you know, those offices have water slides in the middle of the office, and they take, you know, Nerf gun breaks in the middle of the day. If you know that that's the culture of the organization you're applying for, and that's something that you are, one of the reasons you're interested in, try to tailor your cover letter to make sure that you're not either acting too stuffy or too glib, and that you're kind of trying to say, hey, I'm someone that's going to fit in here. I understand you, and now through this, you can understand me and see that I'm going to be a good fit.
And just to that point, I think that when I'm looking at resumes and cover letters, ultimately, most of the candidates have very similar qualifications. And so it does come down to the people. And we often say when they're looking at firms, you know, a lot of, let's say, you know, we're in the accounting industry, a lot of the accounting firms, the work is very similar, right? So what it comes down for the candidate should be the people. And what it comes down for us really is, assuming that all else is equal, is the personality of the person. So being able to show that is really important.
Yeah. And the trick is that you always want to be professional, but that doesn't mean you can't be fun at the same time. So I know that might, for some of you, that might sound a little bit confusing, but that's why there's, you know, you'll have lots of resources as you're doing, you know, cover letters and resumes, and being able to ask, hey, can you read this for me? Sometimes even just asking a friend or somebody, hey, what do you think of this? You know, because you can still be professional and fun. So you don't have to be stuffy to be able to put a professional foot forward.
And that might be mostly confusing for accountants, which we are.
Yeah. Okay, and so then, yeah, be interesting, make a connection, pull something out, let the person. Studies will say that we hire people that are like us in most cases, and so being like someone can mean a lot of different things. It mostly just means making some kind of connection, right? Having some kind of something that's interesting about you that person can connect with and be like, oh, that's interesting, you know, and have a reason to like want to ask a question or talk to you more about it. So, you know, I put a few, there's so many bullets I could say about, you know, maybe you've traveled a lot and there's something you learned about through your traveling experiences that you want to say, hey, this is something I learned. And that's, oh, I remember you were somebody that you took that trip to, you know, Nepal. Tell me more about that. You know, did you play sports? What's that taught you about teamwork? You know, those kinds of things that every job is going to value. Sometimes it can be something like maybe you went through some adversity. Maybe you were, you know, raised by a single parent. Maybe you had, as Christina said, maybe you had something where your GPA dropped because you were busy taking care of a family member who was sick or something. How did you overcome that? What did that teach you about like being, you know, more self-sufficient or overcoming adversity? It doesn't have to just be like the fun things. You can also pull out the things that have taught you lessons. And again, that's incredibly memorable to someone reading. And it makes them want to bring you in to talk to you more, to see, wow, that's a really interesting experience that person went through. It's so impressive how they, like what they wrote in their cover letter. I want to learn more about that, you know? And so, it's just all about using your experience to make a connection and get attention.
And also to your point, Trevor, so I can give you an example. There was a student who, so like I said, you know, for Curtin Stokes, General Ed 3.0 is what I try to kind of keep to. There are obviously others below that we bring in. There was a student that had a couple of F's on their transcript. And at first I thought, oh, geez, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think that they understand the material. And so, but then their cover letter explained. And as I could, through the cover letter and seeing, okay, during this period of time, I was taking care of my mother. Okay, and I can go back, look at the transcript. Okay, and I see that the grades improved. Okay, so this is consistent with what the story they're telling me in their cover letter. Okay, great. We actually ended up offering a position to this individual on Friday. I'm writing her offer letter right now. And she has already told me that she's accepted. So, you know, I never would have met with this candidate if that cover letter wasn't there.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so what's important? Best practices for how you're going to write your cover letter. So being professional, like we said, that's number one. So let's just lay out the nuts and bolts of what a cover letter even needs to look like. You're going to start with your name and address on top. You're going to have some kind of professional greeting, and there's you can Google a variety of examples to know what's a good professional greeting. It's not hey or hi there or something like that, so a professional greeting. If you know who's going to be you're reading the cover letter, and that could be because you've either already kind of contacted them, or it could be because you did a little bit of research and maybe you go onto our website and you look at the staff and you see that Christina's name is the director of talent acquisition, or well, then she's the person that's going to be reading it. And so you can just right up front be, dear Christina, and that's right there. That even just that is like, oh, I don't know this person. How do they know me? It shows that you did a little bit of research, or maybe you have met her. And so you do know, hey, that's who I'm addressing it to. So, if you don't know, it's okay to say something like to whom it may concern, or to the hiring manager at Kernet Stokes or something. But if you can make it personal, make it personal. You're going to have anywhere from 3 to 4 paragraphs. So you're going to have an intro paragraph that's going to be 1 or 2 sentences. You're going to have a body. The body can be 1 paragraph or maybe 2 paragraphs. And then you're going to have a closing paragraph. At the end, you're going to say a salutation, such as sincerely. If you want to be a little more interesting, again, you can Google sort of professional salutations, but don't try to be too clever. There's no see you later or anything like that, right? You want to keep it professional, even if you're going to try to be a little different, and your signature, and then it's going to be 1 page. It's not going to be 2 pages, just like your resume is going to be 1 page. If you think your resume or cover letter needs to be longer, I would challenge you that there are very qualified people who have had a lifetime worth of work experience that can fit their resume on 1 page. It really just means that you need to do some editing to get it down to the more succinct, most applicable facts about yourself that you're going to present. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts. I'm just going to show you here an example of.
And 1 point, sorry, Trevor, before you go on, I was going to say, if it is 2 pages, the chances of it getting read. Also, if there are a lot of cover letters, it's a little bit more daunting for the interviewer or the recruiter. So if you can keep it to 1 page, that definitely helps too.
Yeah, there's actually a saying in writing that is, it would have been shorter if I'd had more time. Because basically, if you've written something and it's like your cover letter, it's more than 2 pages, it means that you probably haven't put the time into editing it and getting it kind of down. Even this one, you can see there's a lot of white space at the top. If they felt like they had a paragraph that needed to be a little bit longer, you could definitely tighten up that top section to keep it all on one page. But I put this up here as just an example. I just Googled professional cover letters and did an image search. And this just popped up as one of the first things. There was literally hundreds of examples just from that one Google search that you could find. But I thought this one really kind of just laid out what I think is a decent looking letter. It's got the name and address here at the top. It's got your email address if you're sending in via mail. If you're sending it via email, they have your email through that already. Again, you're going to have the hiring manager or whoever that is that you think is going to read it as a full name and their name and address. And then you can, I know you can't probably read this really great, but just at this top, dear Mr. or Mrs. And then the first paragraph is the intro, and it's just, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is such and such. I've got this, I'm applying for the position at your organization to do this. And I'm really excited about the prospect of, speaking with you or whatever. So you're just going to lay out, here's who I am and here's why I'm applying. Very basic, 2 to 3 sentences. The middle is where you're going to introduce the most relevant facts about you. Again, you're going to talk about the things that you want to highlight. And you're going to tie that together with what the organization you're applying for. Again, we're going to go back to that why you, why them, make a connection, and a few, 2 to 3 facts about yourself that kind of show why you're interested in and good fit for this job. And then the final paragraph is going to be kind of bringing it all back together. You know, it's a reiteration of, you know, again, kind of restating why you're interested in it and your enthusiasm and how much you look forward to speaking with them in the future. And, you know, please contact me for an interview if you have any questions about my resume or whatever it is. And then you're going to sign off. Christine, is there anything you would add to that, just as a kind of what you would look for as the?
No, I think that's great.
Okay. And again, this is just a template. I actually purposely spent like 10 seconds looking and just grabbed one because I just wanted to show that like it's really not a lot of effort to find a good example. You can just, there's so many resources. It really takes not a lot of time. I didn't create this, and I just grabbed it and was like, this would be a perfectly acceptable cover letter, in my opinion. And the template's just right there. And it took me almost no time to find it. Professional writing, you want to be clear and concise. Again, you're going to have 2 to 3 experiences. You don't want to break down everything. Again, then you're getting too long. So you're trying to pick 2 or 3 of your most relevant qualities or experiences. If you're on bullet 3, spell check and good grammar, right? Nothing will kill a presentation or a cover letter or resume faster than not spell checking and having just misspelled words or poor writing. You know, it just shows that you were hasty and didn't take that extra step just to check. So you could put in all of this effort to write a very good cover letter, and if it just is sort of hard to read and misspelled right off the bat, it's probably not going to matter. So take that extra 10 seconds to hit F7 and have Word spell check your document before you're done. Don't use abbreviations, slang, or casual tone. Now, what I would say is, in professional writing in general, this is true. You can write the way you would normally write if it helps you with your flow of thought to get your words down on paper, but you go back through afterwards, and then that's when you start editing, right? So when I first wrote that, I wrote, don't use abbreviations. I prefer not to use apostrophes in any professional writing. I go back and see, oh, I'm just going to open that up and say, do not. In general, it just reads as a better professional writing. Again, you don't have to think too hard about that at the beginning. That's where the editing comes back to. Style and tone should match the organization. We kind of talked about that. If they're fun, you can be a little more fun. If they're not fun, question whether or not you really want to work there, and then match it to that if you still do, right? Font should match your resume. You want your whole kind of application and materials to be kind of consistent and seem like a well put together document. And then every cover letter should be different for every position. Okay, so I'm going to talk, we're going to tell a couple of brief good stories, and I'm going to tell you about a cover letter I wrote. I applied out of college for a job with Rogue Brewery.
This is the good, not the bad, right?
This is the good. Yeah. I applied for a job with Rogue Brewery, and it was going to be, I was applying for an accounting position. It was a time when it was very competitive to try to get jobs anywhere. A lot of the bigger accounting firms were not hiring at that time, so the job market was fairly tight. I knew it was going to be a very competitive just to even get an interview or anything. Now, you may or may not know Rogue Brewery. They're over in Newport, but if you do know them, what you know is they're kind of they're a quirky organization. They pride themselves on the word rogue, and they like to be kind of outside of the box. They don't use titles like CEO or things like that. They use titles like the Grand Master of Product Design, or they give themselves weird titles, and they try to like always do things that are not normal. So in my cover letter, I was like, I need to grab their attention. I know they're kind of like a funky organization that prides themselves on being different. I need to be different. So everything I just told you about writing the flow of a cover letter still stands, but I did not write just a normal letter. In fact, I started my letter with a story about a kid who lost his coat, because I was just like, this is going to grab their attention. Now it's either going to be an immediate, that goes in the trash, or it's going to be something that they're like, what is going on here, right? And so I was like, I'm going to take a big swing and see what happens. I told this kind of short story, and then kind of in the middle, I brought it back to my experience of the first time I had tried like a rogue beer, and how that to me felt like I was a kid who had been lost, who had just found their coat, and that it was this like warm experience that kind of, and then I married that to why I was so excited and interested to potentially work for their organization. And, and I think I said something like, should you hire me because I'm probably the best applicant you'll get because I'm smart and this and that. And I was like, no, all those things are true. You should just hire me because you're awesome and I'm awesome. And we would be more awesome if we were working together. And so, I was like, I know they're a weird organization. And so I got to do something. If they're going to receive hundreds or thousands of applications, I need to do something. I did get an interview out of that cover letter. And in the interview, the CFO that interviewed me said, the first thing he said was, I've never read a cover letter like the one that you wrote. He's like, we literally printed it out and passed it around the office because everybody wanted to read it. And he said that we had thousands of people apply and we picked 7 for interviews. And I was one of the 7. Now, I didn't end up going to work there, but that was the difference. That's what got me attention. On a resume, I was just another kid out of college with a degree in accounting. And it was really the cover letter that made the difference of whether they were going to consider me for that job.
So I would say the examples that I've seen that really stand out are stories also. One story that particularly stands out is a candidate who tells a story of starting their own business when they were in middle school, and it was a business they were able to they started through eBay. They started selling a product that he was making, and eventually his dad started helping him with the accounting piece. He started to learn the accounting piece on his own because he had to be able to manage that piece of his business. And so since a very early age, he learned that accounting was important and that he wanted to pursue it when he got older. And so that stuck out. And I can tell you, I actually don't remember the candidate's name because I did interview him. It ultimately wasn't the best fit for him or us, but I won't forget the story. I thought that was very creative. Other good examples are what we've discussed before, just folks who have gone through the website or they know about our firm, they're demonstrating their understanding of what it is we have to offer and how they can help us in meeting our goals for our clients, how they can serve us truly, and why they think that they're able to do that. And so whatever relevant experience that goes into that, that's included there. And then again, as we've already talked about, is just the other example with the candidate who had to help her mother when she was sick and explaining that. And then again, it doesn't have to be that I'm so awesome. And just like Trevor said, it's not really about you being awesome. It's about how you can serve the firm. Another thing that I like to see in a cover letter is, and it will say this in the resume, but maybe just spending more time to really emphasize the applicable pieces of if you have really work experiences, McDonald's, let's say, but you worked a lot of hours. You worked, 30, 40 hours a week while you're going to school, emphasizing that hard work or the sports or whatever it is that helped you develop the skills that you believe to be successful in the profession you're pursuing is just really important.
Did you have any bad stories, Christina? I think you gave us like a couple of examples, right? Being too long or
Yeah.
that the ways that they can be a detriment. Was there anything on
Well, too long is tricky because it's like, oh, this is going to take me a couple of minutes. And it might feel a little overwhelming, especially for employers or recruiters who are reviewing hundreds of resumes. But I will say what I've seen a lot of is folks who are applying for at multiple firms. And so they might be applying even in different states. And to them, they just want to get their resume and their cover letter out the door. They're not tailoring it. So I've seen where the template's still in place. Like they haven't even filled in the name. It just says sir or ma'am, and it has little, quotations or parentheses. They haven't even updated the template. And to me, it's like, oh no, we are not of interest to them. They're just trying to get out as many resumes and cover letters as they can, hoping that someone will respond. But if I see that, I generally, usually there's this fairly consistent, it's consistently poorly edited throughout the whole thing. And so I don't spend any time. I won't maybe even reply with thank you for your interest, but there's not a fit.
And it can be pretty obvious if you're using like a boilerplate template that maybe you didn't even write, right? Because you just imagine someone who's reading dozens of these, like if they start reading a few and they sound exactly the same, it's pretty obvious who has not tailored them, with certain phrasing and stuff that might just be pulled from standardized template forms and stuff. So
one other that I see, and I know none of you would do this, but it was hit on a little bit, but applying for a job in a different industry. I've seen that, positions in finance, and they're applying for the accounting firm. I know you wouldn't do that, but the finance applications and resumes and cover letters need to go to a company that provides financial services specifically, and the accounting resumes and cover letters should go to the accounting firm. So, or explain why you think that your finance experience could still serve the accounting firm in some way, and have that discussion.
Yeah, so that is kind of our thoughts on cover letters. Christina, you wanted, this isn't cover letter specific, but I know that when we were talking, you talked about if the cover letter is the handshake at the beginning, there's also something at the end that's also incredibly important.
Yes. So that is it was follow-up. Thank you. Is that what we talked about?
Yeah.
So again, as many people do not include a cover letter, there are probably just even more people who do not send a thank you or a follow-up after an interview. And as a recruiter, it is so appreciated. It truly, the people that you're interviewing with, they're taking their time to try to make that connection. And it's really important and that's also the opportunity to tell, a little bit more about yourself in that thank you, even if it's, an email. Thank you. I really appreciate learning about this and this. You answered my questions on this. I really enjoyed meeting so-and-so. But when you do interview, and they'll probably talk about this, get the names of the folks that you will be interviewing or that you're interviewing with, and make sure you write them. If you can write each of them individually, just an email, a quick email, that will go a long way. When I get a thank you, or one of the partners gets a thank you, it's circulated throughout the firm. Hey, the so-and-so, or throughout the partner group, or whoever interviewed with that person, they all see it. So it's just such a nice touch, and it will definitely set you apart. And the folks, just one quick story. So on Friday, we did some interviewing. This past week, I think I wrote 7 offers this week, and interviewed probably 17 people last week, and probably read over 40 resumes, which is actually really good percentile. We got hired. So, but there was a candidate that one of our partners met with. At the end of the day, she was a maybe. We'll talk about it. She sent this follow-up email that was so on point. And so the partner said, okay, let's give her an offer and see what she says. So it can be as simple as that, if it's well written.
Hillary, is there anything that we didn't cover? Do you think there's other questions you want to ask that we can kind of talk more about on anything?
You did an amazing job. Thank you both so much for diving so deep and breaking down cover letter writing. I feel like it can be kind of intimidating. And so that was very helpful. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit the student perspective, if they're going to be applying for entry-level positions, a lot of times you don't have to write a cover letter. Are you still recommending that students write cover letters, even if it's like you're filling out an application and that's all you need to do? You don't even need a resume for a particular position. Would you still say, yes, turn in a cover letter and resume to that particular position?
No question. Yes. Even just the effort is going to be recognized. And And if it's not required, I would say that that is an advantage because most people won't. And so simply by it not being required, consider that a competitive advantage where you get the opportunity to show that you understand more and are more worth the attention than the other people that are applying at the same time. You know, if it's a job you want, there's just no question that it's going to help no matter what the position is.
Absolutely.
Great. And then one last question. For students who have not had a ton of experience in the working world, who are applying and they're writing cover letters, could you maybe give some examples of ways they could pull in maybe schoolwork or other experiences that they have had that maybe aren't necessarily work experiences, but that could tie into positions that they could highlight on their cover letter if they're not sure what to talk about?
Yeah, let me give an example of something that I think of, and then Christina, I'll let you. One thought I had just have there is what you think is relevant work experience. Actually, you might expand what you're thinking in that regard. So I think, if you're applying for our firm, you might think I don't have an accounting experience, so there's nothing I really have to highlight. I can tell you that we had a woman who worked here once, and on her either in her cover letter or on her resume, it was noted that she'd worked at McDonald's and that she'd once gotten Employee of the Month at McDonald's. You might think that working at McDonald's has nothing to do with working for an accounting firm, and that's just experience that almost could be left off. But I can tell you that our managing partner read that and said, somebody who's willing to work hard enough at a job like a fast food restaurant to be recognized with being like an Employee of the Month is somebody who's going to work hard at a job like this too. And so, one thing I would just say is don't discount your work experience just because you don't think that it's the same job. Your work experience is what it is, and you can point out the reasons why it's useful, even if it just comes from some lessons you learned along the way.
So to that point, I'm looking at a resume right now for another full-time hire we made an offer to this week. His experience, this is for accounting, so he's a student, right? So these students, they do not have experience. So most folks, they have no accounting experience, right? They're in school, and so they can't include that. So what I see here, for example, okay, DoorDash, delivery driver, construction laborer, certified dog walker and dog boarder, a file clerk at an accounting firm, okay? So that was someone who got an offer. I would say volunteer experience. Do you volunteer? Maybe you are involved with your church. Maybe you are in the Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. You've worked on volunteer through your school. You've taken on, maybe you were the team captain of your volleyball team. That shows leadership potential. Anything that shows that you have leadership potential. Babysitting, dog sitting, that response that you're responsible. People trust you with their animals and their children. That's important. Sports, any sports experience that you have, all of that, that's what experience looks like for someone who hasn't started in the profession that they want to go into. And when people are hiring, they're not looking for experience in very specific, they're not going to have done any of the work. So one, did they demonstrate that they could do the work? And we often look at grades, but then do they have the qualities that we are looking for? Are they coachable? Do they have leadership potential? Are they eager to learn? Are they organized? Do they have time management skills? Those things can be showcased in a cover letter.
And if you're listening to this or watching this and you're involved with Connected Lane County or doing things at the Spark Lab, put that in your resume. And let somebody and highlight it in your cover letter about how that experience. I mean, let somebody ask, what is this about the Spark Lab? Tell me about that. And you can talk about, oh, well, through that I learned, how to do this and how to do this. And it was a program where, that even just the idea that you're listening to this right now probably means you have some experience that would be useful and meaningful when you explain kind of how it led to you applying for this job.
That's great. Thank you both so much.
Sure.
Thank you everyone for joining us for this Working Wednesday webinar on cover letters. We hoped you learned a lot, and remember to head to connectedlane.org to register for future webinars and other opportunities. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.